Right now, somewhere on this planet, someone just woke up at exactly 2:47 in the morning, stared at the ceiling for a second, felt a flicker of quiet panic, and reached for their phone like it was a life raft. If that someone was you last week, you probably assumed something was wrong with you. Bad sleep, too much coffee, stress, maybe insomnia. But for more than 300,000 years, humans lived through a version of night that had almost nothing in common with yours. No bulbs, no screens, no glowing rectangle promising 6 more minutes of scrolling. And inside that ancient darkness, waking up in the middle of the night wasn't a malfunction. It was the plan. The evidence for that is stranger than you'd expect. Here's the trap almost everyone falls into. We picture ancient nights as basically empty, hours of nothing, people curling up the second the sun dropped and staying unconscious until it rose again, one long, silent block between one day and the next. It's an easy assumption, mostly because modern night feels like exactly that, an off switch. You work, you scroll, you eventually collapse, and ideally, you stay collapsed for a clean 8 hours until an alarm drags you back out. So when that pattern breaks, when you're suddenly fully awake at some ungodly hour with your brain wide open and nothing to do about it, it feels like proof that your body is broken. But that assumption skips a basic question. If one unbroken block of sleep is simply how humans are built, why does practically nobody manage it without effort? White noise machines, blackout curtains, melatonin, an entire industry built around forcing our bodies into a shape they don't seem to want to hold on their own. Maybe the 8-hour block isn't the default setting. Maybe it's the thing that had to be built. To understand what night actually meant to a human body for most of our history, you have to go back to a cave in South Africa called Wonderwerk, which means miracle in Afrikaans, and it earns the name. In 2012, a team led by archaeologist Berna published findings in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences describing burnt bone and ash layers deep inside the cave, dated to roughly 1 million years ago. This is, give or take, some of the oldest solid evidence we have of hominins deliberately controlling fire, not just using it after a lightning strike, but keeping it, tending it, using it on purpose, inside a cave, in the dark. Here's why that single detail rewrites everything. Before controlled fire, night for any primate meant one thing: stop moving. Get somewhere defensible and wait, because your eyes are terrible in low light and almost everything hunting you can see in the dark far better than you can. Fire changed the actual boundary of the day. It didn't just add warmth, it added usable hours, a small circle of light where you could still see a face, sharpen a tool, watch a child, stay a little bit awake. For the first time in the history of any primate, night stopped being empty, dead time and became something else entirely, a second kind of day with its own rules. And once you have a second kind of day, you have to ask what humans actually did with it. In 2014, anthropologist Polly Wiesner published a study, also in PNAS, comparing daytime and nighttime conversation among the Jew Hwansi San people of the Kalahari. During the day, talk was practical. Complaints, logistics, gossip, who took too much meat, who wasn't pulling their weight. But once the fire was lit and the sun was gone, something shifted almost completely. Firelit conversation turned towards stories, myths, and memories of people 2 or 3 social circles removed. The kind of talk that stretches imagination rather than manages logistics. Why would the same group of people talk so differently just because the light source changed? Part of the answer sits in what we just covered. During the day, your eyes and your attention are doing constant, low-level threat scanning work across a wide field of vision, tracking movement, checking horizons, staying alert to everything around you. At night, firelight shrinks your visual world down to one small, warm circle. There's less to scan, less to manage, less reason to stay on guard. The fire wasn't only letting people see each other's faces, it was quietly switching off a chunk of the brain's threat monitoring system and handing that spare capacity to something else entirely: imagination. Now here's where it gets genuinely strange, because this pattern shows up far beyond one campfire in the Kalahari. It shows up in writing across centuries of European history. Historian Roger Ekirch spent years combing through diaries, court depositions and old medical texts from Britain and Western Europe, published his findings in 2001 in the American Historical Review, and later expanded them into a book called At Day's Close. What he found was a term used casually without explanation, as if everyone already understood it. First sleep. People before roughly the industrial era, across a huge range of historical documents, described going to bed shortly after dark, sleeping for a few hours, then waking naturally somewhere around midnight or 1 in the morning. This wasn't insomnia, it was expected. That stretch of quiet wakefulness in the middle of the night even had a name. The watch. People used it to pray, talk quietly with a partner, tend a fire, think, sometimes just lie there in a kind of calm half-awareness before drifting into a second sleep that carried them to dawn. 2 sleeps with an hour or 2 of deliberate, unhurried consciousness sitting right in the middle, described so routinely that nobody bothered to explain it, the same way nobody today bothers explaining what a lunch break is. That's a compelling pattern in old paperwork, but paperwork isn't biology. So in 1992, sleep researcher Thomas Wehr ran an experiment that turned the historical claim into a testable one. He took a group of modern adults and extended their nightly darkness from a typical 8 hours to 14, roughly matching a winter night with no artificial light at all, for about a month. Within weeks, without anyone telling them to, their sleep split. They stopped sleeping in one long block and started sleeping in 2 distinct phases, separated by roughly an hour of quiet wakefulness right in the middle of the night. A result published in the Journal of Sleep Research, which means Ekirch's diaries and Wehr's lab data are describing the exact same biological pattern. One written by candlelight 300 years ago, one measured by machines in a modern sleep lab. 2 independent sources centuries apart, converging on the same shape. That's not a coincidence. That's a default setting showing up the moment modern light gets taken away, and it doesn't take a month in a lab to see this start happening. In 2013, researcher Kenneth Wright and his team, publishing in Current Biology, sent people camping for 1 week with 0 artificial light, no phones, no flashlights, nothing but sun and fire. Within days, their internal clocks shifted by close to 2 hours, syncing far more tightly to actual sunset and sunrise. A week. That's all it took to nudge a modern nervous system back toward its old rhythm, which makes the next detail land differently. The word curfew comes from the old French couvre-feu, literally cover the fire, a nightly order enforced for centuries in European towns, requiring people to smother their hearths before bed. It wasn't really about fire safety. It was about darkness and about who got to control it. Long before electricity, whoever controlled the fire controlled the night. But here's the part that should make you pause before you start bragging about your 2 a.m. wake-ups at brunch. Just because segmented sleep is the older, more natural pattern doesn't mean it's simply available to you if you want it back. Wehr's participants needed a genuinely dark, artificial light-free environment for weeks before their biology shifted. Most people today live somewhere that never gets properly dark at all. Streetlights, phone screens, a neighbor's porch light, the blue glow of a router, blinking in the corner of a bedroom all night long. The cue that used to trigger this pattern, real, total, uninterrupted darkness, has quietly disappeared from most modern lives. The body's old settings are still in there. The switch that used to flip them almost never gets pressed anymore. So when you wake up at 2 a.m. today, it isn't always your ancestors tapping you on the shoulder. Sometimes it's stress, screen light an hour before bed, or an actual sleep disorder worth taking to a doctor. The old pattern is real. It just doesn't automatically explain every bad night. Let's pause here and address the skeptic in the room, because it's a fair point and it deserves respect. Ekirch's evidence comes almost entirely from Britain and Western Europe. It tells us a great deal about pre-industrial sleep in one part of the world, but it isn't proof that every human society on every continent for 300,000 years slept in exactly 2 neat phases with a tidy hour of prayer in between. Some sleep researchers also point out that biphasic sleep might partly reflect long winter nights specifically, rather than a universal year-round default, since a 14-hour night, the kind Wehr recreated in his lab, is far longer than most nights people actually lived through outside of high latitudes in winter. What holds up across the evidence isn't one precise schedule. It's the broader pattern. Unbroken, continuous 8-hour sleep with no expectation of a nighttime wakefulness is a genuinely recent standard, not an ancient biological law. The discomfort so many people feel about waking in the night deserves a little more historical context than it usually gets. Here's the uncomfortable part of the story. For nearly the entire history of our species, night meant something almost nobody alive today has actually experienced. True, deep, uninterrupted darkness, thick enough that the sky above a sleeping camp would have been packed with stars. The actual band of the Milky Way visible without any effort at all. Today, researchers estimate that a significant majority of people on Earth live under skies too bright to see it. Not clouded, not obscured by weather, just permanently artificially washed out. That loss isn't only poetic. Ecologists have documented real disruption to the sleep, migration, and hunting patterns of nocturnal animals living near constant artificial light, and researchers have linked heavy exposure to light late at night with measurable disruption to human melatonin production, the hormone that helps regulate the exact sleep architecture this whole video has been describing. We didn't just lose a nice view, we quietly removed the one environmental signal that told every human body, every night for hundreds of thousands of years, when it was safe to rest and when it was time to stay alert. The switch is still wired in. We just took away almost everything that used to flip it. So here's the single idea sitting underneath everything in this video. The 8-hour unbroken sleep block, the one you feel guilty about failing to hit, the one every app and mattress ad quietly promises to fix for you, is not some ancient biological birthright you keep failing to claim. It's a genuinely young invention, younger than agriculture, younger than most religions, built gradually out of candles, then oil lamps, then gaslight, then a bulb, then a phone screen, each one pushing the boundary of usable night a little further and asking your circadian rhythm to just keep up. For most of the time, humans have existed. The body expected the dark to actually arrive, expected a real pause somewhere in the middle of the night, and treated that pause not as a malfunction, but as legitimate, unhurried time to think, to talk quietly with someone you trust, to simply exist without needing to be productive about it. That expectation didn't evolve away. It got overridden gradually by better and better ways of pretending the sun hadn't set. You are not broken because you woke up at 2:47 last Tuesday. You are running very old software on hardware built for a much darker world, and every so often when the noise finally drops low enough, that old software boots up right on schedule, exactly like it has for 300,000 years. So let's go back to that moment. 2:47 in the morning. Ceiling above you, quiet all around, and that small flicker of panic that something in your body has gone wrong. Nothing has gone wrong. Somewhere back through 300,000 years of ancestors, someone else opened their eyes at roughly this same hour, next to a fire that had burned down to embers and simply lay there for a while. Not asleep, not fully awake, just present, waiting for a second sleep that would come on its own time. They didn't reach for anything. There was nothing to reach for. They just let the watch happen. You don't have to force yourself back into that rhythm. Modern life mostly won't allow it anyway. But the next time you're staring at a dark ceiling at an hour that feels wrong, it might help to know it isn't wrong at all. It's just old. 300,000 years of nights taught your body one thing. Waking up in the dark is not an emergency. It is the watch. And the watch always ends. So next time you're wide awake at some strange hour of the night, what do you think you're actually reaching for your phone to avoid? Let me know in the comments. Until then, see you soon.